Sending data. Oh, we're already streaming to X. Connecting. Sending data to YouTube. Yeah, X joins up really fast. Hello, we're streaming live. I'm finally back. I had technical difficulties at my house, sorry. So we're going to resume the Bible study today, but my friend BK here wanted us to watch a video. So I have Ouija. BK, you see Ouija? Okay, I hit play. Uh, Make sure all my volumes are good. Here we go. Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh no, it's not picking up volume. Ah, my stream's not picking up the audio. Oh. No, not to OBS Studios. Let me see. I bet I have to do something here. All right, we're live. Oh, that's Tucker Carlson. Okay. Wait. What did I do? It broke. Well, now I don't see my browser. It disappeared. What the heck? Uh, hold on. Like what? Oh, this swirly background? I think it broke. A happy little screen share. What the heck? Six viewers. Oh no! I got six viewers and then my browser broke. Okay. Hold on. I got an idea. Maybe if I close it? Maybe if I close it. I'll close it and then reopen it. Sorry, I still have technical difficulties at my house. Isn't that great? And then reshare to you. And then aha! I made it come back. Look, I made it come back. Oh, but now I gotta figure out. There we go. All right. So we're starting in chapter 11 of Genesis, and we're gonna be covering, I guess, the lineage up to Abram, and then Abram's story, which I think he later becomes Abraham. I know that's a huge spoiler, but I think most people are more familiar with the term or name Abraham than they are with Abram. But I think he gets a rename and a power up. Yeah. Ready to cover this? So I figure I'll read the sections from the Bible and then we'll go over the notes that I have in my study aid. So we'll just start here. So this section is from Shem to Abram, which I believe is his lineage, starting at verse 10, and this is the NIV Bible. This is the account of Shem's family line. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he became the father of, oh boy, Arphaxad. And after he became the father of Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and had other sons and daughters. When Arphaxad had lived 35, whoa, he was a baby. Because all these people that we have talked about in the past, they were having like children in after they're like 2, 3 centuries old. So after he became no, when Arphaxad had lived 35 years, so he's a little baby, he became the father of Shelah. He married super young. And after he became the father of Shelah or Shelah, Arphaxad lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived, I'm just going to say Shelah, had lived 30 years, he became the father of Eber. And after he became the father of Eber, Shelah lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. Wow, these people are having babies as babies. When Eber had lived 34 years, still a baby, he became the father of Peleg. And after he became the father of Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he became the father of Reu. And after he became the father of Reu, Peleg lived 209 years and had other sons and daughters. Why are you dying young? When Reu had lived 32 years, he became the father of Serug. And after he became the father of Serug, Reu lived 207 years and had other sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 30 years, he became the father of Nahor. And after he became the father of Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, oh, the babiest of them all, he became the father of Terah. And after he became the father of Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and had other sons and daughters. He died young. And after Terah had lived 70 years, getting more reasonable now, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So these people started having kids much younger. Wonder why. Let's see if there's notes for that section, which is what, verse 11 through 26? Actually, this is all just actual Bible verse. Okay, we only have notes starting at verse 28, so we'll go ahead and read the next section. We get to read about Abram's family. Oh, I went too far. Here we go. So starting at verse 27. This is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, in the land of his birth. So he's born in Ur. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was childless because she was not able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai to, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to, look, there's Haran and then there's Haran. Okay, they settled there. So Haran got to go live in Haran. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran. Haran and Haran. That's not confusing, is it? Now it's not actually confusing, or it is? Okay. So now yeah, it is. Now we have notes about chapter 11, verse 28. So it's talking about the Ur of the Chaldeans. The city of Ur was in southern Mesopotamia. In southern Mesopotamia, is well known in the literature of the ancient Near East, particularly prominent over the latter half of the 3rd millennium BC. A temple already stood there in the late 4th millennium BC, and its ziggurat, completed later, is the best preserved from ancient Mesopotamia. Oh, best preserved ziggurat. An early empire with Ur as its capital existed for about a century at the end of the third millennium BC, founded by Ur-Nammu and solidified by his successor Shulgi. By some chronological schemes, Abraham's time in Ur and Haran coincide with the empire phase. Some have deduced that Abraham, who was known as Abram by the way, was an urban socialite in this grand center of civilization and that Yahweh's call required a substantial change in lifestyle. Even if it were true that Abraham was born in this highly civilized city, however, we cannot necessarily conclude that he was a city dweller. Ur had its share of herdsmen and farmers as any city did. Controversy still remains as to why Genesis adds "of the Chaldeans" the phrase. Unfortunately, we know little about the history of the Chaldeans at this period. During the mid-first millennium BC, the Chaldeans ruled in southern Mesopotamia, such as Nebuchadnezzar, and consequently the Chaldeans are associated with Babylon by the prophets Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. But prior to this period, the earliest substantial reference to the Chaldeans is in the ninth century BC inscriptions of Shalmaneser III, when the Chaldeans are located in the southeast of Babylon near Elam. Or is it Elam? A vague earlier reference is in the campaign inscriptions of, oh boy, Ashurnasirpal II. These are really tiny letters. See what? Yeah, I can't change it because this is from my book. Oh, I see. Yeah, well, I'm kind of stuck on my own because I'm reading from a physical book. So, whoever Ashurnasirpal II, where the Chaldeans are referred to in passing. Their mention in the book Job, chapter 1, verse 17, suggests that they were nomadic raiders at some point in their history, but it does not help locate them geographically. Suspicion arises concerning the identification of Abraham's Ur as the famous city in the south because the move to Haran does not seem a logical one from there. The distance is at least 700 miles or 1,125 kilometers, and Haran is well off the beaten track for someone traveling to Canaan. If a town were 80 miles or 125 kilometers out of the way, especially traveling on foot, it would hardly be considered on the way. This geographic problem leads some to consider alternatives, and the literature of the ancient Near East preserves numerous other town names with some similarity to Ur. However, since the only Chaldeans we know of are from the south, the designation of the Chaldeans in relationship to Ur must be considered a later explanation placed in the text to help readers who were no longer familiar with the location of the town. Well, I'm still not familiar, but thank you. And then the next concept that it covers is Sarai from chapter 11, verse 30. Sarai, the one without children. It covers how she was not able to conceive. So barrenness was considered a judgment from God in the ancient world. Well, that's horrible. Ancient peoples did not yet understand the physiology associated with fertilization. They viewed the woman as a receptacle for male seed. Rather than supplying an egg to be fertilized, the woman was simply seen as an incubator for the child. Therefore, if a man provided the seed at the proper time, and it says they understood that timing was in relation to menstruation, and nothing came of it, The woman was then seen to be a faulty incubator. That's lovely. But this defect would not be seen as simply a physical problem, since no illness, symptom, or condition was simply physical. Deity was responsible for creation in the womb, and Deity was the one who opened the womb. Sarai's barrenness would have potentially resulted in a fragile marriage, since failure to deliver children to the family was the most common cause of divorce. Oh, that's crazy. In societal shame, since her condition would appear to be the result of having angered a god, so that she was therefore unable to fulfill her societal role, and in an uncertainty for the afterlife, since descendants were believed to sustain the deceased in the netherworld. Oh yeah, like remembering it's kind of like how the Day of the Dead for Mexican culture, they have the ofrenda with like the pictures and they talk stories about their ancestors. It's like the Disney movie Coco. So these people, they have to remember their ancestors or else their ancestors, I guess, fade away in the netherworld. In Abraham and Sarai's case, it also presented quite an obstacle to the covenant promise of having many descendants. So that's a lot of pressure. That poor lady. Can you imagine? Like people think that she's cursed by God or that she committed a horrible sin and it's all your fault. That's great. But anyway, those are the notes about that section. And then the next section I think is chapter 12, the call of Abram. And I think this is where we start to get into Abram getting his rename to Abraham. And there'll be lots of notes on this one. I'm taking a peek. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's a big story. Yeah. Abram and Lot separate. So there's a whole chapter on just the call of Abram. So go ahead and read it. We're starting at chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord said to Abram, yes, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Okay. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. And they arrived there. That's a lot of ands. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem, at the time the Canaanites were in the land. Oh, we got a few things going on. All right. I lost my spot. There we are. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who appeared to him. From there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There. That's too much tech stuff for you. I think it's I, not AI. I could be wrong. A, but I will say I. Aye, aye, sir. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued toward Negev. I'll just go ahead and finish the chapter. So he ends up in Egypt, it seems. Verse 10, now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. Okay? When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but let you live." Oh boy. "Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you." Oh my gosh. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. This seems bad. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Oh, why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her to be, oh my gosh, took her to be my wife?" Yeah, this is messed up. "Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." That poor Pharaoh. The Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. Oh my goodness. So Abram deceived the Pharaoh, and then the Pharaoh thought that she was a single lady, and took her as his own wife, and got cursed. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, probably. This is horrible. Well, maybe they're afraid of the gods, because he was getting cursed for committing a sin against Sarai. That poor lady. Like, she was just like, he's like, "Hey, yeah, literally. You're really beautiful, and if they think you're my sister, they won't kill me." "Okay, dear husband, I don't really want to, but what you say goes." At least it's a pharaoh, not some like guy living in a box in a lean-to. I guess we'll find out more details because there's lots of notes, and I think I understand why there's lots of notes. That was horrible. So we have notes about verses 1 through 3. God's covenant with Abram targets the most essential elements of identity in the value system of the ancient Near East. Land was connected to one's survival, livelihood, and political identity. Family linked the past, present, and future, offering one's most basic sense of identity, or more so than self. So your sense of identity was very dependent on land and family. Okay? And yeah, because like you think about other cultures, so and so, son of so and so, son of so and so, like that was pretty prominent back in the day. So inheritance fixed one's place in the family and ensured that the generations past would be remembered in the present and future. When Abram gave up his place in his father's household, he forfeited his security. He was putting his survival, his identity, his future, and his security in the hands of the Lord. And then more details verse on the concept from verse 1. Go from your country, your people, and your father's household. So one reason God may ask Abram to leave these behind is because it is in these three connections that one related to deity. The gods one worshipped tended to be national or city gods, or you can think country. The clan god, or the people, or ancestral gods. In other words, ancestors who have taken a place in the divine world, like father's household. I know the Chinese do ancestors as well as others. As Yahweh severed the ties Abram would have had with other deities, he then filled the resulting void as the only God Abram would need. Well, that's interesting. So some of these families had associations with more than just the Yahweh God or God of the Bible. That's what that's implying. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, they don't like to because they only want you to know about the one true God, even though there are references to other deities, whether they be gods or mostly little g gods. So interesting to know. Yeah, little g gods. They like to make that distinction. I have no clue. I'm just reading. Well, supposedly there's only one capital G, and that's the God of this Bible. So, sure. I mean, it's always capitalized here, and then other gods are lowercase. All right. Yeah, it's something about distinction. Anyway, verse 2, it covers the subject of great nation. This offer is unique in the ancient world. One can certainly find offers by deities to make someone king and to prosper their line, or even a promise that a particular individual would have many offspring. But the prospect that an it doesn't say, but the prospect that an individual would grow into a great nation is not broached in any other extant extant literature from the ancient world. So this is the only instance where a god or deity has promised an individual would grow into a great nation. And then there's a note about the great tree of Moreh from verse 6. Great tree of Moreh at Shechem. No hint is given that trees themselves were worshipped, but notable trees became places where various sacred rituals were performed. The significance given to certain trees in the biblical text suggests that they designated sacred space. A bunch of different references. Note the eventual indictment of the Israelites that they set up sacred stones and Asherah poles under every spreading tree, which is referenced in 2 Kings. Moreh, the word, the name given to the oak here has been interpreted as suggesting that oracular information was gained here. Moreh means teacher, so teacher tree. Of all the divination procedures known from the ancient world, there is no suggestion of trees used as divinatory mechanisms. Thus we conclude that the tree had significance as a locale rather than as a mechanism. Then the next set of notes is about verse 8, talking about the altar. Usually thought of as raised platforms used for offering sacrifices. Here, however, there is no mention of sacrifices. Furthermore, sacrifices usually take place in the vicinity of a temple and are serviced by a priesthood. No ancient Near Eastern document refers to altars used for anything other than sacrifices in the presence of deity. Uh, Sacrifices were pointless if not offered where a deity was believed to be present. In fact, the only sacrifice by Abram described in the text is near the sacrifice of Isaac, which we'll see in chapter 22. Wow, Abraham gets a whole bunch of books dedicated to him, or chapters rather. If Abram was not using the altar for sacrifice in a place where God's presence was established, what was he using it for? One option, as a land claim marker. This use of altar is attested in the Old Testament in, I want to say that's Joshua, but I'm not sure. So in a later book, I I don't know the abbreviations. But nothing in Genesis indicates this function. We are told only that Abram called on the name of the Lord at the place of the altars he built there, and in chapter 13 we'll see he called on the name of the Lord. Can be understood as invoking God's presence, thus anticipating God's presence rather than assuming it. So basically building a foundation. Support for this interpretation is that several of Abraham's altars are built at potentially sacred sites, such as trees, hills, or a hill in this case. And then talking about famine on verse 10, when he went to Egypt because there was a famine. In the, in the Negev, rainfall is minimal, averaging 4 to 12 inches or 10 to 30 centimeters per year. That's not much, thus making the availability of grazing lands and subsistence agricultural fragile and vulnerable to climatic winds. Water is supplied to the region by wells, and even the rain that does fall does not easily support agriculture. Modern archaeologists and geologists have found evidence of a massive 300-year drought cycle that occurred during the end of the 3rd millennium BC and the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC, one of the time periods to which Abraham is dated. In regards to Egypt, recourse there in time of famine in Canaan was not unusual because the food supply in Canaan depended on rainfall, while the food supply in Egypt depended on the flooding of the Nile. The text offers no identification of the pharaoh at this time. By the earliest chronology for Abraham, the pharaoh of chapter 12 would have been one of the kings of the first intermediate period that preceded the Middle Kingdom, perhaps Imhotep II. Many are more comfortable locating Abraham and his immediate descendants in the first quarter of the 2nd millennium BC, which coincides with the Middle Kingdom. Little is known of this period in Egyptian history, and it is difficult to date the patriarchs with any precision or confidence. Now we get to talk about the beautiful woman from verse 11. So Sarai was 65 when she and Abram left Haran. Perhaps several years have gone by, so we can estimate her age at 70. The compliment cannot simply be attributed to a doting husband, for the text indicates that the Egyptians share this opinion. What is not clear is which features led to this assessment. I guess there's a later chapter in chapter 41, verse 2, the cows of Pharaoh's dreams are described by the same Hebrew term which is translated as sleek, where it conveys robust healthiness and fine specimens. That's great. We need not think that every culture is as superficial as our modern culture in their assessments of beauty. A woman in the ancient world could be attractive either as showing good potential for childbearing or as a tool for political alliance. Neither of these seem appropriate for Sarai, however, for she is clearly not entering childbearing years, and there is no political alliance that makes it attractive to marry her. However, we should not assume that, now they call her Sarah, she does get renamed from Sarai to Sarah, has miraculously attained the beauty of youth. Her dignity, bearing, or countenance could all create the impression of a striking woman. So she might not necessarily be a cover girl model, is what they're saying, but she might have like a charisma or dignity about her that was just. Yes, that's a good word. Captivating. I like that. So now we get to cover when uh, Abram says, "Say you're my sister." Mm, great. This is the first of 3 narratives in which a patriarch attempts to identify his wife as his sister to avoid problems with the power establishment of the region. Apparently, it comes up again in chapter 20 and 26. Interpreters have proposed many ingenious explanations for this behavior. One was that one that was popular for several decades suggested that the wife's status could be elevated if her husband also adopted her as a sister. That is weird. Others have argued that if the wife posed as a sister, the patriarch would be viewed as a party to negotiate with rather than as an obstacle to be eliminated. Many of the proposed theories have the underlying motivation to save Abram's reputation. Unfortunately, at present, we remain ignorant of what sociol, sociological, try saying that 5 times fast, realities commended this course of action to Abram. The Israelite audience undoubtedly knew what advantage was to be gained from the ruse, so there was no need for the author to explain it. For our part, we accomplished nothing by devising solutions designed either to vindicate or vitiate Abram. Vitiate? I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Then we cover the diseases that are talked about in verse 17. So the curse of those diseases. Yum. The terminology here is as general as can possibly be. With no symptoms being given, it is impossible to speculate on what these diseases may have been. In the ancient world, with no knowledge of epidemiology, parasites, viruses, bacteria, or any of the diagnostic tools of modern medicine, people believed disease had its source in the supernatural realm. Treatment focused on the symptoms and combined herbal remedies with magical potions and incantation rituals. Prognoses could offer hope for healing most confidently if an offense against deity could be identified and appeasement effected. Sorry, it's like at the spine of the book. It's hard to read. Extensive catalogs of symptoms and treatments are available in medical texts from Mesopotamia. Fascinating. So, we got some little segments of side notes, I guess, that aren't necessarily descriptions of the verses, but of the basically the culture. One is about the patriarchal religion. So I'm going to cover that. Sorry, but I can't put it on the screen. It's still from the book. Did you have something to say? Yeah. Yeah, we're doing patriarchy stuff now. So, patriarchal religion around 2000 BC, when the Abraham stories should probably be placed, an interesting development was taking place in Mesopotamia, the rise of the concept of a personal god. In this period, yeah, I don't know what that means yet, but I guess a god that is more in tune with you as a person rather than just out there wanting food. Anyway, let's see. In this period, people began to see themselves in a personal relationship with a family god who undertook the divine sponsorship of the family. As a result, most family worship was directed to this god with the expectation that protection and guidance would be provided. When someone sensed that a god had taken his family under his protective wing, the expression used is that they had acquired a god. Da, 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 da. Can't help but to think of like a video game. You've gained a god. Do 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 do. Interesting phrasing. So in Mesopotamia, this god came to be known as the God of the Father or God of the Fathers. A description also used in Genesis, which we'll see many times in later chapters. A personal God was not viewed as the only God, but was the God most directly involved with the family. and the one that was the focus of most of the routine religious activity. Devotion to this deity was extended in the family from generation to generation, and as such was inherited rather than chosen. Though the major gods could on occasion serve as a personal god, more typically a personal god was a lower echelon deity in terms of rank within the pantheon. Only in Israel did a personal God with a capital G eventually become the God of a nation. The biblical text is clear on the point that Abram comes from a family that is not monotheistic. We must assume that he was brought up sharing the polytheistic beliefs of the ancient world. In this type of system, the gods are connected with the forces of nature and show themselves through natural phenomena. These gods do not reveal their natures or give any idea of what will bring their favor or wrath. They are worshipped by being flattered, cajoled, humored, and appeased. Manipulation is the operative term. Oh. They are gods with needs made in the image of human beings. One of the main reasons God, with the capital G, makes a covenant with Abram is in order to reveal what he really is like, to correct the false view of deity that people have developed. But this is projected to take place in stages, not all at once. The Lord, or Yahweh, is not portrayed as a God whom Abram already worshipped. It is interesting, then, that God does not give him a doctrinal statement or require rituals or issue demands when he appears to Abram. He makes an offer. Yahweh does not tell Abram that he is the only God there is, and he does not ask him to stop worshiping the gods his family is worshiping. God does not tell him to get rid of his idols, nor does he proclaim a coming Messiah or salvation. Instead, God says that he has something to give Abram if Abram is willing to give up some things first. It is possible that Abram first views Yahweh as a personal God, who is willing to become his divine sponsor. The Lord provides for Abram and protects him, while obedience and loyalty are expected in return. One major difference, however, is that our clearest picture of the personal God in Mesopotamia comes from the many laments that are offered as individuals seek favors from the deity or complain about his neglect of them. There is no hint of this in Abram's approach to Yahweh. Abram maintains an elevated view of deity that is much more characteristic of the overall biblical view of deity than it is of the Mesopotamian perspective. Though we have no indication that Yahweh explained or demanded a monotheistic belief or that Abram responded with one, it is clear that the worship of Yahweh dominated Abram's religious experience. By making a break with his land, his family, and his inheritance, Abram is also breaking all of his religious ties, since deities are associated with geographic, political, and ethnic divisions. In this new land, Abram does not have any territorial gods. As a new people, he does not bring any family gods, though Rachel attempts to when she leaves. Guess we'll find out about her later. Having left this country, he does not have any national or city gods. It is Yahweh who fills the void, becoming the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Any thoughts or questions regarding that section? I mean, it seems pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, yeah, so there's definitely a lot of, uh, what would you call it? Like affirmation that there were gods everywhere, or that people at least believed in all these gods. And then the last big segment, which is actually not that big, is about the covenant. Um, so, though the agreement between the Lord and Abram, is not termed a covenant until Genesis 15, uh, the first articulation of the general terms of the covenant occur in Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3. Let's look at that real quick. Yeah, so God told him what to do. So that was the start of the covenant where he said, you do this, I will do all these things for you. Yeah. Uh, well, well, you think about Abram and his barren wife. Like, if you got a God that's saying, yeah, I'm going to bless you and make things great for you, like, how much was he stressing out over his barren wife and the possible curse that she had to become barren? It's like, here, I gave you hope. At least that's how I take it. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but that's just my speculation, I guess. So the monotheistic worship of Yahweh is a clear distinctive for Israel in contrast to the peoples of the ancient world. But more distinctive still is the covenant relationship between God and people. Israel's self identity, her view of history, her belief in her destiny, her understanding of the attributes of God, such as holy and faithful, her understanding of her obligations to God, articulated in the Torah, and the basis of the prophetic institution all derive directly from the covenant. In each of those areas, despite the existence of similarities with the rest of the ancient world, the Abrahamic covenant marks the departure and underlies the uniqueness of Israel. In the ancient world, gods may have been viewed as personal gods who undertook protection of the family, but they did not make covenants. So that made it very distinct. What, the personal gods? Yeah. Yeah, I know, like, there are people who believed in, like, gods of the hearth or, like, a guardian spirit of the hearth or something like that. It sounds like it's the same thing, really. Let's see, how long is chapter 13? It's not that long. How about we go there? It's talking about Abram and Lot separating. So we'll read that. Are there notes on it? A few notes. Not too many, I think. Yeah, one paragraph of notes. Okay, we shall do it. Let me put my bookmark back. Alright, we shall go to chapter 13, because we finished all this. Chapter 13, Abram and Lot separate. Starting with verse 1. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. So they were kicked out of Egypt because Pharaoh didn't like him with his stupid deception and causing cursed diseases. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. So the Pharaoh let him keep all that stuff. From the Negev, yeah, well, I don't think. He's probably like, here, just take everything. I don't want any more curses. I'm not that greedy. Just get out. Should have told me she was your wife. From Negev, he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier. So he backtracked. And where he had first built an altar. There Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great they were not able to stay together. Too many mouths to feed. And quarreling arose between Abram's herders and Lot's. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at the time. Sounds like it was kind of packed. So Abram said to Lot, let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine. for we are close relatives. Is it not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan towards Zor, I guess, was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So I guess that was over there. So Lot chose, yes. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were, oh boy, this is an interesting bit of story. Now the people of, yeah, it's funny that it's so short though. Now the people of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted from him, look around from where you are, to the north and to the south, to the east and west. All the land that you see I will give you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go, walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he pitched his tents. There he built an altar to the Lord. Oh man, so we did. Yep, new waypoint. Let's cover the notes on that, and I'm wondering if we should save the big bad story for next week. Yes, though it might not be that long. It's not very short, but it's got a lot of notes. All right, well, but I still have notes. Yeah, I still have, yes. I have notes for chapter 13, however, so I want to cover those real quick. Let's hear it. All right. So, actually, the notes are only for towards the end. So, in verse 17. No, I'm giving you everything. Go, walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. That's what it's covering. So these notes say it is common for the biblical covenants to be compared to political treaties in the ancient Near East. These treaties formed relationships between political entities that required loyalty from the vassal and offered protection from the suzerain. The Suzerain. I could have horribly mispronounced it. I don't know. Suzerain? Suzerain? But anyway, let's call it the I don't know, a vassal and his lord. So required loyalty from the vassal and offered protection. No, wait, protection from the suzerain. Okay. I was going to look up the word unless you want to. Okay, so it's common for the biblical covenants to be compared to political treaties in the ancient Near East. These treaties formed relationships between political entities that required loyalty from the vassal and offered protection from the suzerain. Suzerain. What is suzerain? Okay. Why couldn't they just say freaking Lord? Oh well. I have to use weird words I've never seen before in my life. Huh. Supremacy. Huh. Okay. So now we know that. Continuing on, the formal documents that articulate the covenant between Yahweh and Israel compare favorably in form and function to these treaties. Uh, what page? This farther. The covenant with Abram, however, seems different. Rather, it is better to compare this covenant with the ancient land grants. In the ancient Near East, ruling elites commonly made land grants to their faithful vassals. While the form of treaties and land grants overlap considerably, the important difference is that the treaty is a document that imposes obligation on the vassal, while the royal grant represents an obligation of the suzerain. I hope I'm saying that right. Abram would have easily recognized what is transpiring here, and it will be formally confirmed and ratified in chapter 15. So that's 2 chapters from now. But I figured we'd leave off here. The next chapter, we're going to cover Abram rescuing Lot from Sodom and Gomorrah, the wicked pair cities. So that'll be fun. Have that set up for next time. Yeah, like it's one of the big stories, and it's one of those things that basically people interpret as all forms of deviancy. Like, I don't know. Well, if we did, then we do. I don't know. Don't necessarily care. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you have anything that you wanted to talk about from what we read, or are you good? Yeah, it is. Very contractual. But I guess that's like also how we come to the reference of the Lord too. It's like that reference to like the feudal lord or sovereign lord, all that stuff. It kind of gives it a little more context, I guess. Well, if we're good, then I guess we're good. And if anybody decided to watch and sit through this with us, thank you. We appreciate you. We're going to leave it here for now. Yeah. Thank you for joining, BK. And thank you, anybody else who wanted to sit through this with us. It's interesting to learn things. All right. Yes. I guess bye for now.